Well, I think punk rock means something, you know?
This to everything, absolutely everything that's gone before, you know.
Punk rock got me into politics, social justice, anti-racism, women's rights, economic justice, what have you, anarchism.
I got introduced to the concepts of environmentalism through hardcore shows, concepts around like sweatshop, fair trade, all of that.
In the mid-90s, there was sort of this like revolution of just a million vegan straight edge bands.
And we were on a mission. We were like, we're going to educate people on animal rights. Like, that's going to be the focus of our band.
When I became a vegan, it was very much like an animal rights thing. It was very much about animal liberation.
Years ago, a friend of mine asked me to say some MC rhymes. I said the rhyme that I'm about to say. The rhyme was deaf and it went this way. Started the New York Hardcore Chronicles live. That's right, 3 years, man. What's up, what's up? 3 years. Imagine that. That's crazy, man. 260 shows in 3 years. Hey, Gertie, how you doing? Hey, Sally, what's up, John, Chris, Robert Hogg. Here we go. Robert Hogg, since day one, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. It's been great. It's been great. I hope you enjoy it at least half as much as I do, Hey, Vincent, how are you? Thank you, Astoria Lou. 3 years. 3 years yesterday. I think the first show was April 8th. Yeah, so it is. Yo, Stephen Oswald, high and mighty. Yo, did you get my letter, bro? I mailed you a letter. Look out for it, man. Hey, Brian, what do you say? Yeah, it started out in Arnie Stone's kitchen. Go figure, right? It's been great. Absolutely. Hey, Necrotic. Neotronic mind. London in the house. Good. We got a healthy London audience for this show. So I appreciate that. Chris Hoffman, since day one, thank you, bro. Imagine that. I so appreciate everybody out there that that watches the show and who enjoys it, and who's supported, Yes, Jockey. Sweden, huh? Good. Yeah, things march on. We march on. You know what? Funny you should ask about Jim, because we sold Arnie's apartment. I put him. I wasn't sure if I could bring like a dead animal carcass on the plane with me. So I put it into the storage room. I wasn't sure if like a shriveled up dead lizard, how do you like bring that on the plane? I guess you could put it in the check bags, right? That's what I might do on the way back, What is this? Oh, it's the mascot for my live internet streaming talk show. It's a dried up dead lizard, So there you go. Is that right? You love the show? Yeah, Phil was, you know what? You're right. I didn't ask Phil about his motorcycles. I didn't. Sometimes things start popping, man, and he was great. Wear it around my neck. Yeah, for sure. I'll hang him in the background. I'll hang him off the wall. Ask Moby about Anne. Things are moving slow on the 200 on the 3-year anniversary show here. Moby's having some technical difficulties. We're waiting for him, so we're going to do our usual thing, and we'll see what happens. I don't worry about these things anymore. As a matter of fact, I enjoyed the challenge. You know what? If Moby doesn't make it on, fuck it. I'm putting the link in the chat room, and we'll do that again, which always turns out to be like the best shows, So, yeah, you could smoke on a plane. I remember. Yes, I am rocking the Donna Summer shirt. This is true. I remember when you could smoke on airplanes, and it was sort of crazy. You'd be like, oh, I don't want a ticket in the smoking section. But like the fucking smoking section is like right behind you. And like people are like right one row behind smoking. Oh, it was horrible. Smoking on a plane. Like it was horrible. Disgusting. Eyes like burning. Like you're in a tube that's careening through the atmosphere. And there's like people fucking smoking. Yeah. Crazy. That said, speaking of smoking, hey.
What's up?
That was you smoking on the plane, wasn't it?
So you could tell them that Jim is your comfort animal,
Just
and
my
that
comfort animal.
you need to have him with you on the plane.
Ashtrays are still on some planes.
Remember when newscasters used to smoke?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
Today there was a car accident.
Kennedy got shot. His brains went flying all over the back of the car. Yeah. Is that right? Discharge played Edinburgh last night.
Oh wow.
That's our boy JJ, man. Love JJ singing for Discharge, man.
One of our early guests.
Hey, did you sent me this talking about shows over there, man? This is kind of a badass show. This Dog Day afternoon thing.
I would love
get a
to
load
be
of
at this
this
show.
I mean, now Generation Sex is the two guys from Generation X and the two guys from the Sex Pistols, right?
That's Billy Idol, Steve Jones, I believe James Stevenson. I'm not sure who's on drums on that, but what a show that is. I mean, Stiff Little Fingers. Come on now.
Sure.
What a great show this is. And Glenn Matlock is playing bass in Blondie right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like 3/4 of the Sex Pistols will be represented.
Yeah, you have Steve. Yeah, this is crazy.
I bumped into Glenn Matlock the other night, and he was with Clem Burke. It was after we played Berlin. Yeah, we were sitting outside the A7, and they came by, and I was talking to him. Yeah, interesting.
Glenn Matlock.
Yeah, so the Buzzcocks. Who sings for the Buzzcocks now? Like, isn't the main dude in the Buzzcocks passed away?
That's a good question.
Listen, yeah, I'm feeling you, bro. Stiff Little Fingers all day.
Oh yeah,
I've seen Stiff Little Fingers pretty much every time in the past 10 years they come to New York. They're fucking great. They always deliver. So
Amazing.
So Steve Diggle sings. He sings everything, huh? All right.
Do you know? Years ago, the Stiff Little Fingers opened up for the Dropkick Murphys at Roseland. And do you remember the bar remember a movie called Sleepers?
Sort of.
With Billy Crudup and Kevin Bacon. It was a true story. Robert De Niro. Well, anyway, Billy Crudup, there's a scene where Billy Crudup kills Kevin Bacon in this bar in the city. And after the show, the Stiff Little Fingers went to that bar for some drinks, and I went there with my brother and some friends, and me and my brother got in a fist fight with each other in front of the Stiff Little Fingers. And to this day, anytime I've seen them, they always remember that, and they're like, I have a brother, I know what that's like. It was such a funny moment that we shared with them, and it's something I've been able to laugh about them with for years.
My kid, we went and saw Stiff Little Fingers when they played. They did like a late night, midnight show at the Grand Victory. And,
oh wow!
And Caleb was like 9 years old at the time. And I said, "Come on, we're going." And we went, and they knew me there. They brought us right in and put us right on the other side of the barricade. So 9 years old, he's watching Stiff Little Fingers, like delivering the goods. It was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
They're still great. Jake still sounds great. They're awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Buzzcocks. Anyway, let's talk about photo of the day here.
Let's do it.
This is interesting. Here we go. Photo of the day. Wrong answers only, please. Here we go. Wrong answers only. Photo of the day. Hey, Moby, I see ya. I'll bring you on in a couple minutes, man.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
Excellent.
What do we got here? Wrong answers only, please. Let's see. Is it hi, Kristen? Is it hi, Drew? Hey, Steve.
Hey.
Is it Larry? Is it Dave Vila? Good one. That's kind of funny. Is it Vim Fuego? Is it The Weeknd? Is it George Michael? Is it good one? Is it Vinny from the Jersey Shore? Good one. Hey, you know what? People are on point on Easter with the humor today. Is it the Hamburglar?
He's got
Is
the
it Dr.
shirt.
Demento? Is it some ego? Is it some emo kid? Is it Creed? Is it Adam Lambert?
Oof. Ouch.
All right.
That's rough.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get right to it. Right answers only, please. Answers only. Here we go.
Can't beat that album right there he's holding.
Yeah.
If you listen to Fools.
Mob Rules. Is it the Squinter? Is it Vanilla Ice? All right. Right answers only, please. Come on. Get cracking here. Is it Ricky? Spelled wrong.
There we go.
Is it Ricky? Almost spelled right. Is it Headbangers Ball?
Now we're moving.
Now we're moving and grooving. Is it? What is it? All right. Go ahead. Tell us. Yes, is it Ricky Rackman, The Story of Lou? Go ahead.
Yes, The Story of Lou. This is Ricky Rackman. And this was the other night at Iridium. Ricky Rackman is doing a tour right now called 1 Foot in the Gutter. And it's a spoken word tour. And as anybody, a lot of people remember, he was the host of Headbangers Ball. And from there, he did some stuff with NASCAR and some talk radio. But amazing, guy has stories for. He was the owner of the Cat House in California and Los Angeles.
So what was it? He was just up there, sort of like telling story, like a 1 minute, like, hey, I remember when.
Well, he had a video screen with pictures and video, right. And he was telling stories of when he put together the Cat House and when all the highs and lows of MTV and Headbangers Ball and the different guests that he that he loved and the ones that he didn't get along with. It was really, really. He's a great storyteller. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about this guy that I did not know. He's had a lot of personal demons along the way, as most artists do.
We got to get him. We got to get him on the show.
He would be a tremendous guest. He was a great speaker. Anyone who was into the metal stuff, even the hardcore stuff, because he's actually a huge hardcore guy.
Let me tell you something. All right, hold on. Let me tell you something. Let me tell all you motherfuckers something. All right, about Ricky Rackman. Yo, don't say nothing bad about Ricky Rackman on my show, because Ricky Rackman is a good dude. Ricky Rackman, back in the day when we did the Biohazard Punishment video, Ricky Rackman was such a fan of Biohazard that he personally pushed it through, and Biohazard ended up it played on Headbangers Ball 14 straight weeks. And Ricky Rackman was behind that. And Ricky Rackman has always been a straight up dude, and he was always incredibly supportive of when we were on the Biohazard run. Good dude. So
absolutely.
So there you go. Any new Darby? Yeah.
Actually, funny you mentioned Darby Crash, because there's a very famous photo that he showed of Darby Crash holding a skateboard.
Is that right?
And it's Ricky Rackman's skateboard that he's holding.
Yeah.
Which
we got to get him on.
Very cool. I don't even want to give away half the stories he told because they were so good. And he's going to hopefully be coming back around. So he has some phenomenal stories.
I haven't seen him in a minute, but back in the day, he really gave us love. Yes, happy Passover to all my brethren out there. All my Jewish brothers and sisters. Happy Passover. All right. Well, let's shalom, motherfucker. So, hey, excited to have our guests back on the show. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Happy Easter over there. Happy
Easter to you too.
I know you guineas out there in Long Island are doing it. Do your thing, baby.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Because it's a shout out Sunday, last minute, I want to shout out Paul and Johanna DiCarlo, and I want to shout out Leah Vendetta, who's Ricky's wife. They were kind enough to hook me up, to let me photograph the show, and shout out Al Bareel, who was our first Easter guest on this show.
3 years, bro.
Yeah. Happy Easter to everybody. So.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Well, there you have it. This is the one, the only 3 years in. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. And we are sponsored by New York Hardcore Comics, The Organic Grill, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, 126 Hardcore Clothing, Upstate Records, and the Texas Silver Rush. They're a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. They specialize in working with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as to style them for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. Their client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Rowley, Ringo Starr, and of course, my friends and yours, Agnostic Front. Information and online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram pages, and of course, www.thetexassilverrush.com. That said, let's clear the deck. Let's bring our guests on. Make sure everybody's behaving themselves in the chat room. Thank you, Ozzy. I appreciate it. Here we go. Today's guest is an American musician, songwriter, singer, and producer who has sold over 20 million records worldwide. In addition to his music career, he's known for his veganism and support for animal rights and humanitarian aid. Here today to talk about his new film, the punk rock vegan film, please welcome back Moby. Hey, man.
Hi. So I have a quick question.
Please.
I'm sitting outside and I realize it's kind of noisy out here. So if it's too noisy while we're talking, I can walk back inside. Just let me know.
Thank you for the disclaimer, bro. How are you?
It's a funny question because I sort of feel guilty saying that things are okay right now. Not to be too negative, but I look at the world with whether it's war, deforestation, climate change, attacks on democracy, et cetera, et cetera. It seems a little strange to say I'm fine, but if I'm being honest, right now I'm sitting outside. It's a beautiful day, and a apart from mortality and apocalypse, I don't really have any big complaints.
Yeah, it's absolutely a strange dichotomy, right? It's
Yeah.
like the world is really crumbling. Deforestation at an insane rate. You could look this way, but in my apartment in New York now, it's like I have a nice little world right now. I'm okay, but that's the world we live in. So that said, let's get cracking, man. I reached out to you. I saw the punk rock vegan film and I fucking loved it, man. I thought you did a really, really great job with it, and I just wanted to get you on and talk about it. So let's kind of kick it off with what was the impetus to do the film? What got you going on it, and what was the initial sort of process to get up to speed?
Well, the first time I was exposed to the idea of punk rock and animal rights was in 1982. I was in a band called the Vatican Commandos, a Connecticut hardcore band, and we did our one and only tour, at least that I was involved in. And it was me, Vatican Commandos, Reflex from Pain, Seizure, and CIA. And we got into a van and we drove to Akron, Ohio to play a show in a pizza parlor. And that was the entire tour. And and I remember waking up on the floor of this squat in Akron, Ohio, and this punk rock kid with a blue mohawk said, "Hey, do you want some lentils? This is a vegan squat." And keep in mind, I didn't know what a lentil was.
Sure.
I certainly had never heard the word vegan before. And because at the time I was living in Connecticut, I was eating McDonald's. I was just, a junk food eating punk rock kid. And then a few years later, I finally went vegetarian, went vegan. And as you know, like New York was sort of ground zero for that, with, Youth of Today and Shelter and Gorilla Biscuits and Derek from Sepultura and on and on and on.
And places like Angelica's opening up early on in the game. And there being food in Tompkins Square Park. There was a bit of a consciousness towards veganism early on in New York. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and you know what's funny? With everybody I interviewed, or at least a lot of the people I interviewed for the movie, from Walter, Ray, Purcell, Derek from Sepultura, John Joseph, Rob Zombie, even the recurring thing that everyone mentioned that I'm sure you remember was Prana Foods on First Avenue.
Sure.
Everybody, we all worked there. We bought our nutritional yeast there. And so I think in some way, shape, or form, I think there's something still there. I think there's still a health food store or it right there, or maybe it moved a store or two down. I mean, there's a place called Commodities that opened up a block away that was like the shinier, fancier version of Prana.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
But so my point being that when I was growing up, I associated veganism with the hardcore scene, even going back to Crass and The Damned and Bad Brains and MDC. And then a few years ago, I was talking to some animal rights activists, and these were kids who had tattoos, they had piercings, and they didn't know that a lot of animal rights came from the punk rock world.
Sure.
And I just thought, what an interesting way of looking at this issue, sort of telling this strange history, because for you and I, a lot of this is very self-evident. But for a lot of people, they think of punk rock, especially in the wider world, for them, hardcore and punk was just anarchy. It was chaos. It's, stage diving and people punching each other in the face. And how it's really interesting how surprised people are to see that hardcore especially is like some of the most principled lyrics, the most thoughtful lyrics, whether it's, No More by Youth of Today or Cats and Dogs by Gorilla Biscuits. It's just been really interesting showing people how ethical and principled the hardcore scene was and how ethical and principled the lyrics were.
Listen, let's just jump around, all right? Growing up in Connecticut, playing the Anthrax, being in the Vatican Commandos, did Youth of Today, did they come across your radar screen at that point? Did you feel connected to them right away? You guys were about the same age.
Yeah, so I mean, Ray and Purcell, they had been in a couple other bands like Violent Children and Young
Yep.
Republicans.
Sure.
And so my Vatican Commandos, we played with Violent Children and Young Republicans either at Pogos or Anthrax more times than I can count. One of my favorite shows with Violent Children.
By the way, excuse me. Here's a Pogos flyer. It's an Anthrax benefit from Pogos with Vatican Commandos, CIA, Violent Children. You know, so obviously you guys you're in the same circuit.
Oh yeah. So I remember Ray and Purcell from 1982. But this one time we got asked to play a hardcore show at this prep school called Choate Rosemary Hall. And the guy who booked it, he was some kid at the school. He was in the hardcore scene, but the way he talked the school into letting us play is that we all had to invent different names for the show. And so, for example, Reflex from Pain became Reflections from Poetry.
Right.
Violent Children, I believe, were the Velvet Curtain. So it was just it was our way of sort of like getting the school to pay, to allow this show to happen. And of course, the show was just, you know, a fun, chaotic, hardcore show. But like the fact that everyone had to come up with these very gentle names in order to get the show booked.
You had to soften the blow. And I just want to post a picture here of Vatican Commandos, and here you are playing guitar, right?
That's that. I don't know who that is in the middle. That's Jim on the left. He was sort of the leader of the Vatican Commandos, and that's me on the right in the bygone days when I had hair. And I think what you can't see in that picture is I had a bunch of, because that either that night or the week before, a bunch of Boston bands had played, like Gangrene and The Freeze and Channel 3. And so my guitar at that point was covered in Boston hardcore stickers.
Wait. I think this might be a better representation. Here's you and the guitar.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, you can see a Channel 3 sticker.
Yeah.
There might be. It's hard for me to see because I'm on my phone, but like, we also used to play a lot with Adrenaline OD, if anyone remembers them.
Of course. And by the way, 1 week ago today, we played with Channel 3 here in New York. It was great.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was really great. And another, I mean, before we're sort of getting this stuff out of the way here, but here's a shot evidently of you sitting outside the old Anthrax.
Yeah, I mean, so when Brian
looking very forlorn.
Yeah, I was a depressed kid. But the first Anthrax was actually in Stamford, and the very first Anthrax was so tiny. I mean, this was the new Anthrax in Stamford. And I remember this day because Brian and Sean, who ran the Anthrax, had this hip hop meets hardcore event. And this was 1983. It would have been like May of 1983.
Sure.
And so all these graffiti artists came up from the city, and there were hip hop DJs, but also a bunch of hardcore bands. And what makes it so memorable for me is one of the bands who played was this band called Hose. And the guitar player from Hose was Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin, sure.
And that's the first time I ever met Rick because he borrowed my amp and he broke it.
Wow.
I'm still going to ask for my $50 back.
And did you, in the ensuing years, did you, when you crossed paths, did you say, hey, remember that time you broke my amp and all that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the next time I saw him, I think was probably, I don't know, 12 years later at Angelica's.
Sure.
And we're friends, and I see him all the time. And it is interesting, as you know, how many people came from that scene, you know, and I keep running into people who like were at the Anthrax or at A7 or at CB's, like, you know, the tentacles have gone out long and far from that world.
Yeah, we say this a lot, is like, in a way, like hardcore is like a portal. It's like a gateway drug, you know? It's like a lot of people, you know, Duff McKagan, a lot of people come through the portal of hardcore because part of it is the community and culture of hardcore says, hey, it's the heart that matters. Hey, you might not be the most skilled, but that's okay. Get up, make it happen. You're welcome here. And for a young person, that's that's incredibly powerful.
And that's also this recurring thing when I was interviewing everyone for the movie. And it's kind of, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it's kind of amazing how many people I was able to get in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have to say, getting like Captain Sensible and Steve Ignorant, those, because we had to go to the UK to interview them.
And invited me to stay.
So here's a clip. I got a clip right here. This is this my, because this, to me, this is a huge one, which is this guy right here, man. I mean, Steve Ignorant. Of course, there's Captain.
In Bristol,
but
in England at the time.
Well, so Steve Ignorant really was him and Penny Rambeau.
Sure.
And I was sad I couldn't get Penny Rambeau in the movie, because Penny Rambeau was also, one of the animal rights activists in Crass.
Sure.
But like, it's so interesting. And I don't know if you've had this experience with your podcast and also the work that you've done, but for the most part, when you and I sit down with our friends, we just shoot the shit in the most relaxed, normal, like lighthearted way. But what's wonderful about interviewing people is you suddenly realize how thoughtful and intelligent your friends are. Like, I mean, John Joseph, I sat down with John Joseph in Tompkins Square Park. We've known each other for decades, but this was the first time we'd ever had a really serious, thoughtful conversation. And he was so insightful. Like I hate to say this, I didn't know that this was who he was underneath the persona, this intelligence, this insight, this compassion.
Sure.
So it was a really wonderful aspect of making the movies, just seeing how thoughtful and intelligent all these old punk rockers are.
I think, and I can absolutely relate to that. In doing the Michael Lago film or the New York Hardcore Chronicles film, when I sit down with somebody, whether it's Metallica or whether it's just some sort of knock around, neighborhood guy, the way I preface it always is, let's have a conversation, you and me. So it's not, question. It's in some interviews that I've done, I've talked just as much, if not more, than the person I'm interviewing. And, my belief is within that sort of interaction, the fluidity, naturally, some good stuff is going to come out of that. I mean,
oh, absolutely. It's a really interesting process. Like suddenly finding yourself as an interviewer.
Yeah.
And it is hard, especially as I'm sure you've experienced way more than I have, like when you're filming someone and you're so used to having a conversation, like sometimes I have to like sit back and just
work in the hospital,
rather than weigh in with my opinion, I just have to let the other person speak, because I know, like, like in this movie, in Punk Rock Vegan movie, no one wants to hear my voice. Like they want to hear Walter from Gorilla Biscuits, they want to hear Andrew from Fall Out Boy, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I want to touch on the Crass thing again. At what point did Crass come into play for you personally? Did they jump right out of the gate in the early '80s as sort of and I won't say a musical act? It's really like a movement, an organization. At what point did you sort of say, okay, Crass?
Well, I remember exactly. Do you remember? On NYU, Tim Summer had two shows.
One Noise the Show,
and like Oi the Show that became Noise the Show, or vice versa.
Sure.
And so, when my friends and I were 15, we went and hung out near the NYU radio station in the hope. I think he was interviewing, I don't know, Heart Attack or Bobby Steele or someone, and we were going to like hang out and try and get an autograph. And we saw some guy with a Crass t-shirt. We had been hanging out in a diner on the corner, I guess, of like University or somewhere around there near NYU. And in these days, we were so desperate for connection to anyone in the punk rock world. We followed him and asked him about his shirt. And he explained it was a Crass t-shirt, and it stood for Anarchy, Peace, and Freedom. And they were vegetarians. So we were hanging out outside the NYU radio. We never met Bobby Steele, And we never got any autographs, but we found out about Crass from this random kid wearing a Crass t-shirt.
That's great. You know, I want to show, you know, I've told this story before. Hold on, I got to find this because this is really, really great. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Hold on. So I've told this story on the show a couple of times, and let me just get this. Let me just get these photos going here. Here we go. So to make a long story short, a couple of years ago, a family friend, a guy that was working, my dad was a filmmaker. He was my dad's cameraman. And then he was a little bit older than us. Then when I did the music videos, he was a cameraman with me in Paris from the Cro-Mags. At a certain point, to make a long story very short, he gifted me 3,500 photos that he took from London, 1977, right?
Whoa.
He just said, he lives in Cambodia now. He's a doctor in Cambodia. He helps underprivileged people, and he was a EMT in New York, which equates to being a doctor in Cambodia, which was pretty tough. So he gives me these negatives, and I scan the negatives, and sure, for each Generation X or Susie and the Banshees, there's like opening acts that he had no idea who it was, right? So at a certain point, I'm like, there's this one band I just cannot figure out. And I'm friends with Tony Barber from the Buzzcocks. And I'm showing Tony Barber some of the stuff. And I show him this. And he says, oh, yeah, that's Crass. And I said, wow. He said, that's Crass's third show they ever played. Just as they were getting their legs underneath them. And here's another great shot. This is who you interviewed for the film, right? Younger. So he's like, oh yeah, that's Crass. And I was like, wow, okay, score.
It is funny. And I don't know if you had this experience, but like when I was growing up, when I first discovered UK punk, I was living in Connecticut, and the only way we could find out about it was from the occasional copy of like Trouser Press magazine.
Sure.
And then you suddenly find out, like, because in my mind, these were legends. These were, they were so much older than me because I was 16 or 15 and they were 17. And finding out that really they were all just kids who hung out in the same bar together, like Billy Idol and Susie and John McGo from, from Magazine and different bands and Adamant. Like they were all just these kids who hung out in bars together. And it was really funny realizing like these weren't, huge rock stars. They were just kids who were a few years older than us.
Here's a real banger from my negatives.
Yeah. I mean,
I
got to say some of those early Gen X records are pretty remarkable. I mean, I don't know if it's what people's thoughts are about Billy Idol these days, but boy, oh boy, my generation and some of those songs are really special.
I was thrilled to see Nicky Garrett turn up in your film.
Yeah, Nicky's he's from UK. He's one of the founding members of the UK Subs, and He lives in San Francisco, and he's a vegan chef. And same thing, like in making this movie. And again, I assume that you've had this experience plenty of times where like, you never know how people are going to be. Like, are they going to be arrogant? Are they going to be obnoxious? Are they going to be entitled? Every single person we spoke to in the movie was so generous. Like Nicky, I went up to San Francisco to interview him, and he made us lunch. And when I left to go to the airport, he gave me snacks for the plane.
That's great.
Like, just everybody was so incredibly kind and generous, especially people I'd never met before. Like I'd been a big MDC fan, but I'd never met Dave Dichter. He was lovely, like the nicest person in the world. The only person, it's funny.
He's a gem. Dave Dichter's a gem.
Oh yeah.
He's a gem of a guy.
The only person in the movie who scared me a little bit is Don Bowles from the Germs.
I could see that.
he's the only, like, of everybody we talked to, like, for example, the guys from ACXDC came over and they brought vegan cupcakes. Like, everybody was so delightful. Don Bowles is great. And what he said in the movie is wonderful, but like, he's the only person where I was like, oh, I feel a little bit nervous right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, what we're talking about, and I just, in my experience, and I think it pertains, when we do these sort of things, we want to leave a little room for the magic to happen. You don't want to come in with a very regimented sort of thing. You want to leave a little space for the magic to happen. And in doing that, you're sort of rolling the dice a little bit, and anything can happen, so.
Yeah, especially when, like, the entire production crew was me and a friend of mine. So
yeah, that's awesome.
We went down. I had heard that Scott from Earth Crisis had started a band with Andrew from Fall Out Boy called Sect. And I just drove. They were playing a show in a record store in Orange County. So my friend and I just drove down there and sort of like hung out and asked Scott if we could interview him. And it was funny because he and Andrew were looking around like, where's the camera crew? And I was like, well, that's me. And it's like, aren't there lights? Aren't there sounds? It's like, well, no, it's just, we just drove down here and hopefully we can do an interview. So like, I think that also disarmed people a little bit when they realized that they were expecting this huge production, and it's really like the whole thing was DIY, which also has led us to be able to give it away for free. Like, that's the key to releasing the punk rock vegan movie, is it's free. Like, it's free on YouTube, it's free on any free site, and no one should ever pay to see it, because I just can't in good conscience create any barriers to anyone wanting to watch the movie.
And I commend you for that 100%. And I have, we've lived that in my family. My father directed a Muhammad Ali documentary in the 70s. It sat in a drawer for 40 years. I got my hands on the film. I retransferred it. We decided as a family, let's put it on YouTube for free. What are we doing here? You know what I mean? It's like, let's put it out there so people can see it. And so the art must be liberated, and it's like, let's get it out there. And it was the greatest thing we did. We get so much really kind messages from people that just love Ali and all that. And the thing just gets, tons and tons of views. But, putting it up on YouTube is a great strategy in a lot of ways, because really, truth be told, it's the way the most people are going to see it. If you want people to see your work, put it on YouTube for free.
Yeah. And in this case, I mean, like, we knew that we wanted to give it away for free. So we tried as much as possible to keep the costs as low as possible. So, for example, there's lots of animation in the movie. And in order to do it, I just did the animation. And we edited it in-house for the most part. And I think the total budget for the movie is probably around $70,000. So that meant, okay, we want to give it away for free. We want this to be, available to everybody, because as you know, there are lots of people.
We'd have these discussions, and
there are lots of people who can't afford.
Actually, before I met them, I think I was a rebel without a clue.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to get. I was trying to show some of the animation here, which is just really great. The animation that you did. Let me just.
But we did. We had to learn how to do stop motion animation. That's just me drawing.
Yeah.
A time-lapse drawing of me drawing punk rockers sitting around a fire.
And there's a bunch of it in the film. It's great. The animation, and I'm sure as a first-time filmmaker, you sort of you probably knew this already, but animation is just a great way to move the story along. And I did it in the Ilago film. Same thing. I went and found an animator. Animation is a great way to move things along when you sort of don't have the words or don't have it's just a fantastic tool for film as a filmmaker.
And also to break it up, because with this movie in particular, like, some of what we're talking about is quite serious, which is, animal rights, veganism. But as we both know, especially the hardcore scene has always been this wonderful balance between the incredibly earnest, the incredibly dark, and the kind of ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
even think of like Black Flag. Like Damaged is one of the darkest, heaviest records I've ever heard, but it also has TV Party.
Sure.
You know, I mean, even like Minor Threat, like this very serious band. I do have to say, going to the Discord house and interviewing Ian also made me a little intimidated because he's Ian. But like, you know, Minor Threat were so serious, but they also covered Louie Louie and they covered 1-2-XU. So like, there was always that balance between the aggressive, the urgent, and the really kind of at times like playful and ridiculous.
Yeah, and the early American hardcore scene had that, absolutely. With you know, teen idols, I drink milk, and just stuff like that.
I mean, like Circle Jerks. I mean, they're just, I love Circle Jerks, but a lot of what they did was kind of like funny. Like Beverly Hills is sort of a funny song, and the Dead Kennedys, like Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. There's a lot of really lighthearted. I mean, granted, I don't. I was just realizing, like, there's also "I Kill Children," which might not be the most lighthearted approach to lyrics, but
right.
But nonetheless, like that. I guess you could call it like the combination of the earnest and the profane was such a part of punk rock for the longest time.
Sure, absolutely. I love coming up here. Hold on, he's coming up. You interviewed a good old friend of mine, and I like how you I like how you handled it in the film. You know, because I know he doesn't like to be interviewed, you know, with no makeup on. But I know he's incredibly passionate, you know, about being a vegan.
Yeah.
And I love how you kind of handled the Doyle thing. Could you give us a little perspective on it?
Well, you know, it's funny. The first time I saw the Misfits was 81 or 82. And it was the first time I ever went backstage at a show. They were playing at Pogo's in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
And I somehow snuck backstage.
Wow.
And this was Jerry and Doyle and Glenn, and they were in full makeup sitting in the dark. And it was one of the scariest things I'd ever seen. So like,
wow.
I just thought like, oh, these are terrifying human beings. And then years ago, I met Doyle, and he's like, as you know, the kindest, most wonderful person. And, you know, he and his girlfriend, Alyssa, they're such committed vegan animal rights activists. And so when he agreed to be interviewed for the movie, he only had one condition, that we not show his face. And so at first I was like, well, do we put a black bar over it? Do I find like a little skull emoji and put that over it? And then we thought, you know what, let's just take the path of least resistance and just blur it out. And that way he'll be comfortable with it.
I'm looking for the Pogo show. What exactly oh, here it is. 12/18/92, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Pogos, Misfits. There it is.
12/18, that would have been 82 probably.
Yes, 82. What did I say? Excuse me, my mistake.
You said 92, and I was like,
oh my 12/18/1982, Pogos, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Glenn, Jerry, Doyle, and Robo. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know Robo, because I always thought of Robo as being that classic Black Flag lineup drummer.
Yeah, he was in the Misfits for a minute. Yes, and it's true. Stephen Oswald said yes. When I was singing for the High and the Mighty, we played with them at the Channel a couple months later, and that was great. But Doyle's a great guy. I love Doyle. I've known him a long time. Very happy that he's out there doing his own thing, and has sort of carved a niche for himself doing his Doyle thing. An incredibly passionate guy when it comes to, you know, veganism and what he eats, you know.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again, like the fact that I was able to sit down with so many people I had grown up idolizing, and you know, I mean, HR was another one. Like, and he, as you know, like HR is very gentle now. So like, interviewing him was a little bit of a challenge. He was so kind and gracious, but just very delicate. And I was just like comparing that with like seeing them at CB's in 81 and 82 and 83 and like him doing backflips off the drum riser. And now he, you know, like it was a bit of a challenge getting him to just keep talking because, as you know, he's quite gentle now.
Absolutely, and that's a kind way of putting it. You know, I spent a lot of time with HR in summer of 83. We practically lived together for the summer, and talk about lentils and all that.
Yeah.
HR used to love to make food and cook, and he'd make us food, and he'd make us these incredible, dishes, all vegetarian. And but I remember HR would love to. He was a great, a great cook. I want to ask you about this scene in the film, which is this great kind of
dialectic.
Miss Julia, are we allowed to yell?
Punk rock absolutely involves yelling.
I love this bit with the kids. Where'd the kids come from? And the kid with the Smith shirt on, love it. The kid with the Smith shirt on, winning right there.
So
where did you gather up this little crew from?
So basically, in making the movie, for better or worse, as we talked about earlier with the animation, I just wanted to break things up a little bit.
And you did.
And so I had this idea, like, wouldn't it be funny if my friend Julie pretended to be a professor and she's teaching a grad student seminar, except her kids are 4-year-old punk rockers. And so I just reached out to
as you know, we are here to discuss the central thesis of the...
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just reached out to everybody I knew who had kids and said, hey, can we like get some vegan cupcakes and borrow your kids for 10 minutes and just have them pretend to be punk rock grad students. And
where did you shoot this?
That was actually shot at a friend of mine volunteers at a church in Pasadena. So the church let us use their library. I'd never been there before, but it looked the way I shot it, it looked enough like a classroom that it felt
great. It felt
like it worked.
Yeah, it really worked. And part of the thing, and you touched on it, is when we make these sort of documentary films, you want to break it up a little bit. You want to introduce different elements, whether it's animation or a scene like that, or the scene later on, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the Satan scene and stuff like that. You want to break it up, and I really think that you did that. I love when one interesting kind of thing, it was when Dave from MDC was talking about touring Europe in 1982 and basically just surviving on like what was it, like lettuce and
brown
water
bread
and brown bread.
Mm-hmm.
And things have changed. And I remember going over there, years later, and you go backstage and it was like, ugh, you're like, really? So, but amazing how things in our lifetime have changed.
Oh, I mean, I went vegan in 1987, and back then, like, I believe there were 2 vegan restaurants in the whole world. And now I live in Southern California, and there are probably 20 vegan restaurants in a 2-mile radius of my house. So like the world has definitely changed. I mean, like touring as a vegan in the early days, as Don Bowles from The Germ said, was not easy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know what's bizarre? I mean, and this is just sort of the bizarre life that we lead, right? Is that I'm sitting watching it on the big screen on YouTube, and of course YouTube shows commercials constantly, and you're just getting like sort of bizarre, slightly inappropriate commercials as we're watching the vegan film. Whether it's buy this car or Tyson's chicken, and it's just like it's like. It reminds me of like being in rehab and watching TV, and you're watching like beer commercials while we're all sitting in rehab, and it's like, ooh, this is awkward.
Yeah.
But but it's just how it plays out.
That's in the realm of like, unfortunately, things that we just can't control. Like, you know, as you know, if you want to give something away for free on YouTube, you unfortunately have to like they're going to throw the commercials in there. I mean, I guess it is a little strange that, and I don't know how this works, but like the fact that they're interrupting your content and my content with commercials, but they would be keeping all the money.
Yeah.
And they're monetizing like your Ali film, like they're monetizing that. It's your content, but they're the ones I mean, I guess that's why they're the billionaires and we're not.
It's YouTube, man. It's a shaky platform. I got to watch what I say because this show's streaming on YouTube right now, as well as you know, on Facebook as well. Let's talk just real quick, and then I'll take a quick sponsor break, and we'll come back and get into some other stuff. But also, I saw Rob in the film. Do you go back a bit with Rob?
So Rob Zombie was actually in school with Jim, the bass player from Vatican Commandos. And so Rob drew the cover for the second Vatican Commandos 7-inch from 1984.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he's been in, I mean, I guess a lot of people don't think of him as being part of that Lower East Side hardcore scene, but like he like I said, he drew the cover of the Vatican Commandos second 7-inch almost 40 years ago.
Well, I mean, being a born and raised New Yorker, I absolutely connect White Zombie with not just the Lower East Side, but the Lower East Side.
Oh,
like, they were in the depths, man.
Well, I remember. Do you remember that club, the Lismar Lounge?
Of course, man. Of course.
So, like, White Zombie played there so many times, and my friends Jim and John were like, "Hey, we're going to see Rob's band again." I was like, I've seen them 5 times, and they were like the Flesh Tones, like one of these bands that just played constantly. Where you're like, okay, I've seen them enough times. I think I'll stay home and watch TV.
Here you go. Here's the great Lismar Lounge graphic. Boom, there it is.
Yep.
The infamous Lismar Lounge, which I mean, this was a funky place. Hell's Angels hung out there. You know, I saw Circus of Power there. You know, Raging Slab, White Zombie. We played there. I mean, this was talk about a dive bar, man. Woof.
Yeah, it was one of those places where I learned to drink vodka in a pint glass.
Yeah. Yes, Paris Mayu from Cro-Mag says, White Zombie opened for the Cro-Mags a bunch of times. Opened with Tom Sawyer. Is that right? That's
really?
That's
funny. I don't necessarily associate the Cro-Mags and Rush, but
yeah. Well, Paris
I do remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was actually, and I think it would have been 84, 83, 84. There was a Rock Hotel show, and I believe it was Murphy's Law and the Cro-Mags. And it was the first time I had gone to a hardcore show where I was genuinely scared. Like, it was at the Ritz, and I remember people were like diving off the balcony with engineer boots. And up until that point, I'd never been actually frightened at a hardcore show. And I have to say, when I met John Joseph, later, I was like, like, is he going to stomp on my collarbone with engineer boots? Like, do I have to watch out?
As we digress, here's an interesting one. Vatican Commandos are great Gildersleeves. You remember Gildersleeves?
Yes. So the funny thing about that is Great Gildersleeves is actually where I met Ian Mackay for the first time. And I thought he was the biggest rock star in the world because he had made, he'd put out Flex Your Head and the 7 inches. Sure. And so I remember I was 16, maybe 17, and I went up to Ian Mackay as they were like loading up their gear after the Minor Threat show at Gildersleeves,
which was a great show.
And I was so polite. I walked up and I said, Mr. Mackay, my name is Moby, and I just wanted to say that, like, I really respect what you're doing, and I'm a great fan of your band, because in my mind he was the biggest rock star in the world.
Sure. Absolutely. Here, wait, I have that. This is it online. Oh, here it is, man. This is gold. This is gold. This is what I do when I'm on airplanes, by the way. I methodically and meticulously label this stuff. And here is the Minor Threat set list in Lyle's own handwriting from Great Gildersleeves.
Wow.
There you go. There you go, people. You know? Yep.
I'm just looking at the set list. You know, it's funny. I actually got really lucky. I was in DC in the summer of 1982, and I was buying records at some store in Georgetown, and the woman behind the counter said, "Oh, you need to buy this. There's this local band, Minor Threat." And so she sold me the Out of Step 7-inch on red vinyl.
Sure.
And then about
on red vinyl, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was really, I think, the original print pressing of it was on red vinyl.
Yeah. And so, and it was all Xeroxed.
Sure.
And so a few years ago, I decided to sell all my records and give the money to a charity that I work with called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.
Fantastic.
And of all the vinyl I had, and I had some really rare, obscure vinyl, the Out of Step 7-inch was the one that sold for the most money.
Wow.
So it sold for $3,000. Some fan in Sweden wanted that original Out of Step vinyl. I was like, well, it's going to a good cause, so by all means, I hope you enjoy it.
And that's great that you did that. You know, I know a lot of people like to, hold on to this stuff, but I do not. I like to move the stuff along to people that would cherish it. You know.
Yeah.
To me, any of this stuff, all this stuff to me all this material stuff is very fleeting. I don't really have that much interest in it. I mean, sure, it's nice background to my show, but a long time ago, the records, the shirts, I gave it out, sold it, whatever. What am I going to do? Keep it in a closet? Let somebody that loves it have it. That's what,
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the knock about like vintage instruments for a while, that people who are collecting vintage instruments like art pieces, and yet, the instruments aren't being played,
Yeah. I mean, that was because as I said, I sold my vinyl and I sold a bunch of equipment because I was like, well, at present, the vinyl's not really being played. The instruments are, for the most part, sitting in a storage locker. Why not sell them to people who are going to use them and love them, and in the process generate money for charity? It just seemed like a lot better use of old instruments and old vinyl than just sitting and collecting dust. So while we're talking, I have to do something.
Go ahead. I'm going to take a sponsor break for what, 5 or 10 minutes. You want to go do it?
Sure. Okay. I'm going to move because as we've been sitting here, the sun is slowly pushing me into a corner. So I'm going to go try and, this is, as my uncle would say, everyone should have such problems, but I'm going to go find somewhere that the sun is not going to.
Thanks for segueing into the sponsor break. I'll see you in 7 to 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. It's most definitely on. 3 years in. Go figure. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Thank you all for supporting the show. Hey, I see Paris Mayhew out there. I want to let you know that Paris got his Facebook page hacked by it's out there. You got to be careful, right? He's rebuilding the Agro's army. So please, if you're watching right now, pick up the communication device, get onto Facebook. There it is, www.facebook.com/Agro's Army. Help Paris Mayhew rebuild the Agro's Army. Agro's, great band. Looking forward to seeing them live. We'll be back in a minute. And now a word from our sponsor.
Since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs, as well as t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections and music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Hey guys, Vlad from Organic Grill. As you can see, we're in a new location on West 3rd Street, right by Blue Note and Comedy Central. The place is bigger, kitchen is bigger, we have more varieties, more food. We are looking forward to treat you guys with great dishes. all Hardcore Chronicles, welcome to Organic Grill. We are going to serve all the events as we usually do, and we are happy to see you guys.
Peace, what it do? Welcome to NYHC Comics at 117 Main Street, Dobbs, Surrey, New York. I'm Debo the Pro with my homie
Lee Farley.
Welcome to the spot. Specializing in yesterday's and today's comic books, rare CGCs, toys, collectibles.
Got skateboards, old school tapes, Magic the Gathering, Warhammer.
Video games, original art pieces by your favorite New York City and worldwide artists. Let's go. Skate decks all day, baby.
We also have the young reader section here for like 10 and under. The Pops. People love the Pops.
Star Wars! We are New York hardcore. We always rep the scene. Let's get it on. And we're back. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. 3 years in. Suckers on my jock when I walk down the block. 3 years in. Thank you all so much for your support. I want to address this to all my patrons out there. By the way, I want to shout out my latest patrons, Bridget Holmes, Jay Banks, Chris Dominico, Joshua Sanders, Meredith Bain, and Keith DeWeese. Listen, everybody remembers this, right? The New York Hardcore Chronicles Volume 1, 1980 to 1989. It was free to all patrons. It was available after that. Coming up is Volume 2. It is being designed right now. Volume number 2, 1990 to 1999. Great stuff. There's a page for the gas station, Sick of It All at the Roxy, Paul Bearer from Sheer Terror, Coney Island High. This is 1990 to 1999. Volume 2 is being designed as we speak. It should be available, within a couple of months, and it is free. Read my lips. It is free to all the patrons that have supported this show. So listen, take your yarmulke. Listen, I know it's Passover. Take your yarmulke off. Get on Patreon. Support this friggin' show. It's coming your way. If it's free, it's for me. So there's the Patreon page. Listen, become a $2 patron, a $5 patron, or if you feel generous, please. But it's happening. The next book. And I know the first book, people loved it. So, yes, you want a copy? Join friggin' Patreon, motherfucker. Hey, Brett the Bookie, what's up, man? I'll see you later. Yes. Yep. Two's happening. It's all, yes, thank you, Brett, on 3 years. I appreciate it. 3 years and going strong. Coming straight out the slums. It's the hoodlums. I'm pulling the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live out on all you bums. So, yeah, there's the Patreon. Yes. New incendiary device available in your lifetime. Records mixed. It's happening. Yeah, get on Patreon, you bums. Speaking of upcoming shows, 1 week from today, here we go. 1 week from today, Kira, Black Flag, Dose, Twisted Roost, solo and sound editor. Of course, you may or may not know, her and her team won an Oscar for sound design in Mad Max Fury Road. A couple days after that, Senor Pistachio from H2O will be on the show. Wednesday, April 26th, very excited about the new music spotlight. We're bringing our old friends on, Jerry A. from Poison Idea. He sings on his new band Crime Scene. We're bringing Sammy from Fang on, the Cropsy guys, and Dan Nastasi from Kings Never Die. Old school Max's Kansas City punk rock represent with Cynthia Ross from the B-Girls. Of course, she was engaged to Stiv Bators. Lots of cool punk folklore on this one. A couple days after that, Theo from the Lunatics. Then we got Wino from the Obsessed on Sunday, May 14th. And hasn't been announced yet, but excuse me, this one has. Sunday, June 4th is Tim Shaw from Thug It and Ensign and Thug It, I Quit. And then put your shoes and socks on, kids. Chris Jericho's coming on the show. He's, of course, people know him, wrestler, musician, Fozzy. He's celebrating the release of his new digital comic, The Painmaker. Yo, Chris Jericho coming on the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. So lots of cool stuff going down. What else do I want to mention? If you're watching the show in rerun, please subscribe to the page. Please follow me on Instagram. If you really want to know what's going on. Once in a while, I even post a personal picture. If that's your thing. Yes, Chris Jericho. How about that, right? Yo, people want to come on this show. We are very fortunate in that regard that people know about the show and want to come on the show. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, man. It's been great. It's been a great run. My life has taken a turn. I wasn't part of the plan, but I'm very grateful. Very grateful for it. Yeah, people love wrestling, man. I know people friggin' love. Who do we just have on that was like a wrestling fanatic? Oh, Lars from Rancid, right? Wrestling fanatic. That said, let's clear the deck and let's bring on our guest, the director and force behind the punk rock vegan movie, Moby. Hey, man.
Hi.
That's your dog in the film?
That is, so one of my best friends, Lindsay, has this tiny little rescue dog named Bagel, and Bagel makes recurring cameos throughout the movie. And as you might have noticed if you watched the movie, Bagel, in addition to being adorable, also has the power of speech. So Bagel is one of the only world's talking dogs.
Right. And let me just so here you are with Bagel.
Time for it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go way back.
So one thing that about this film that's really, really great is the first third of it. It's a very good hardcore and punk documentary. The first third of it, you really like. It's really, I recommend it to anybody. But besides the obvious, but the first third of it is like a really standalone, great hardcore punk documentary. You just did a fantastic job with it. Just laying it out there, man. It's really great.
Well, thanks. I mean, one of the things that was really helpful, and again, I don't know if this has been your experience as well, is basically there were 4 of us working on the movie, and I was the only one who came from the hardcore punk world.
Yeah.
And so the people I was working with, who were a lot younger, kept asking questions that I hadn't answered. Like that particular scene where Bagel and I are playing chess, it's followed by my cursory history of punk rock, starting with Gene Vincent, basically.
Yeah, it was great.
Because the people I worked with was like, they're in their 20s and their 30s. Like for them, punk rock started with Green Day.
Sure.
And I realized, unless you grew up with it, you wouldn't know the history. And it's really presumptuous to assume that like anybody under the age of 50 would know about punk rock from the 60s into the 70s into the 80s. So like there was a lot of that being reminded by the people I worked with that I had to actually address this origin story, because very, like, you and me know it, and probably everyone watching knows it, but a lot of people in the general population don't know this history.
Absolutely. And I could relate to that in the context of, like I said, my dad was a film director, right? My kid, who's in college, and his girlfriend they just graduated from SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and she's a filmmaker. He's working in animation and After Effects, and so we're all at the dinner table together. And my dad, of course, starts talking about The Godfather, which is like cinematically, a groundbreaking film and everything. And they have no idea what he's talking about. None.
Yeah.
And then he starts reeling off, Citizen Kane and this and that, and they have no idea. They have no reference point to it. And then upon further discussion, we sort of arrived at my dad kind of having the self-realization that when he was coming up, he didn't watch silent films and stuff like that to sort of get he was in the present moving forward. And that's basically what a lot of young people, how a lot of young, and how, we were when we were young. And this is how it is. I mean, sure, some people go back and study the roots of all this stuff, but for the most part, young people are in the present moving forward,
Yeah. I mean, even like I said earlier, like when I interviewed Ian from Minor Threat, I was so nervous because he's Ian, from Minor Threat and from Fugazi, and then we were going to do it in Discord House, and I was really anxious and nervous. And the people I work with, their response was, "Wait, who is he again?"
Yeah, it's great.
And I was like, "It's Ian. Like, this, the first punk rock 7-inch I ever bought was a Minor Threat 7-inch. Like,
don't you understand? I wouldn't be standing here right now."
Yeah, so they're definitely like when we're telling the story to people who didn't live the story themselves, there has to be that understanding, like, oh, you have to explain things. Like, you have to explain, because we can't make the assumption that someone who's 28 years old would be aware of the nuances of a musical genre that happened decades before they were born.
Absolutely. Here we go. I really love this bit. I really love this bit here.
Good evening. My name is Ava Braun, and welcome to True America Tonight.
My name is Ava Braun. Nice one.
Yep. You'd be surprised how few people caught that.
Good evening. My name is Eva Braun. Right.
Yeah.
Adolf Hitler's mistress.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, hold on.
With me, Ava Braun. Tonight, I have a legendary guest.
Hi, Ava. Pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have an insanely busy schedule, so I really just want to extend my appreciation to you.
My pleasure. I'm a big fan of yours, big fan of the network, big fan of everything you guys do.
Thank you. So I just wanted to know.
I love how the horns are just slightly off center. I mean, nice touch.
Well,
you played it straight. You played it straight. Love it.
What I learned is that, because we bought the horns and spirit glue, because I thought I would just glue them to my head, and it turns out you can't. Like, they just kept falling off. So they're actually tied to the back of my head with some thread. And if I couldn't move at all, which also made me play it even more straight, because they would have just fallen off. Like, red grease paint is really slippery.
Sure.
Maybe I'm just naturally oily. I don't know, but the horns were on the verge of falling off the whole time.
It's great, and we talked about, you want to sort of break up, and add, different, things to it. Like we used to say, Paris Mayhew and I, when we did the videos back in the day, flavors make videos. You want to have a couple flavors in there, and this is a really great flavor in this film. This one really goes over well, I thought.
Oh, thanks. And you also, as you and I both know, oftentimes, whether it's a band playing live, whether it's a documentary, sometimes you feel by the first 10 minutes that you know what the rest of the set's going to be like, or the rest of the documentary is going to be like. And one of the reasons I keep introducing these weird elements into the punk rock vegan movie is so people don't know what's coming next.
Right.
This idea of like, oh, even if I don't like what I'm watching right now, I know it's going to change because it just keeps changing. And some people might find it frustrating, but it's a way that and at least from my perspective, like it's kind of like the Bad Brains when they would play reggae songs. You'd be like, oh, they're playing a reggae song. I don't love it, but I wonder what's next.
And I could catch my breath for a second.
Yeah.
Before the world just basically like goes like hails into Armageddon once again.
Yeah.
I see you got our friend Rachel in the film, who's working for Mayor Adams now. I know she is part of his vegan. What's the proper terminology? His vegan, not incentive, but I know she's. Once Mayor Adams got elected, she sort of stepped up there with him. How about that? Mayor Adams is a vegan.
I mean, he's a sort of, I'd say he's vegan adjacent. Like,
okay,
I mean, what an odd, interesting mayor. I mean, boy, oh boy, I if I'm being honest, I can't really make a whole lot of sense out of who he is or what he's doing, but he certainly seems like he reminds me of the good old days of Ed Koch, where you're like, I don't know what he's doing, but it's interesting.
Thank you. That was well put, because it's like it's a little confusing with him. He comes from a police background, and yet it's a little confusing. Sort of what is he doing?
Yeah, it's like he meditates, but he also goes out every night until 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's partying, but he's also sort of a vegan, and he comes from the world of the police, but he was also the victim of police brutality. I'm like, I can't figure this out, but New York is a complicated place. Maybe it deserves a complicated mayor.
Well, I think he's a vast improvement from the mayor we had before. So,
Yeah, de Blasio didn't at least from my perspective, and I don't want to get in trouble, but he just didn't seem like he was able to accomplish that much. Like, just seemed very passive in a way. So who knows? But Rachel.
Yeah,
this is what I tried to show at the end of the movie after going through the story, like the history of punk rock and activism and animal rights activism, is showing how there's a new generation of people who come from the hardcore world but have gone on to do different things, like Keegan, who's directed What the Health and Cowspiracy, my friend David Coleman Heidi, who helped start the Humane League, and Rachel, who works in politics, like trying to show even, Kat Von D coming from the world of hardcore and developing this empire, and underneath it all being fueled by veganism and animal rights activism. So that's why I was really thrilled to have Rachel in there, to show that like hardcore for a lot of people, for you, for me, for I assume most people watching, like it was that spirit that compels us to go out into the world and get involved in politics, get involved in culture, and to go out and like really try and, I don't know, affect the world in which we live and not just be passive.
Absolutely. And I actually say it in XXX All Ages XXX, the Boston hardcore film. At the end of the film, my one biggest takeaway from the early hardcore scene was get up, get out, and make it happen. It inspired me as a young person to you don't need a record label, you don't need a film crew, you don't get up, get out, make it happen. You can do it. And I think that a big part of that is the community, is being inspired by the community or a community. And I think that pertains to the film too, is that seeing the film, you're inspired by the community. I think that's safe to say.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, inspired by at least growing up. I mean, there were the scary elements, as we all know. You'd go to a show and there were the people you just knew to sort of stay away from. But for the most part, when you fell down, someone picked you up. When you released a record, people on local college radio would play it, even if it wasn't very good. Yeah. When you played a show, your friends would come and people would applaud, even if you were still trying to figure out how to play your instruments. And like,
right.
It was just that it was so, I mean, I know it's an overused acronym, but it truly was DIY. Like, learn how to make a t-shirt, learn how to make a cassette, learn how to make flyers, learn how to do graphic design, we had to teach ourselves how to do everything.
Sure.
And I think it made us a lot more compassionate towards other people who were trying to do the same thing. Like, at least I don't know what your experience was and what other people's experience was, but from my perspective, there was almost no competition. It was surprisingly supportive, which is really, I'm grateful that I grew up with that. I'm grateful that we all grew up with that level of creative support.
But I think part of that rings true as it was a youth movement, and being that I'm still sort of in this world. I see similar youth movements. There's hardcore scenes that exist where the kids don't even barely come to any of the shows that I'm doing. And I'll go to one of their shows, and it's like, wow, it's a whole nother world of very young kids that are all feeding off each other and being inspired by each other. And it's not just hardcore. I think that could be said for any sort of community. Is the Cat connection? She did the tattoo on your neck, right?
Kat did a bunch of she also did the tattoos on my arms, the NYHC tattoos, the Vegan for Life, some of the other ones. Yeah, I mean, the thing, I mean, obviously I know she's incredibly successful, but I always felt guilty because whenever she did tattoos for me, I would try to pay her and she wouldn't let me pay her. And I'd be like, oh, come on. Like, I mean, granted, she has an empire. She doesn't need my $100 or whatever, but still, it made me feel guilty. Like every time I'd go get a tattoo, I was like, come on, just please, this time let me pay you or do a remix for you or something.
I think, and I don't know, Kat, but I think part of the mentality is, you're part of, you're on the team, you're part of the community, and it's she probably feels it's just, she's honored to do the work, and you're out there, and you're such a powerful advocate, for the whole thing, and I think she sees the value. And like I said, one thing I really love about the film too is it has an underlying sense of humor, up until a point, because it's really at a certain point, and we are kind of jumping around here, and I have this in my notes. I really love at the end of the film, after all the kind of the yucks and the this and that, you sit down and you look the camera right in the fucking eye and you just deliver the goods. And it's very well, it's very good the way you do it. I think it's really great. You really just kind of say, you know what, hello, and you just really address the issue. And I really commend you on that. It's very powerful.
Well, as you know, there's always that question, like, what structure should a film take? Like, and also how do you end a movie? And I just thought, like, you know what? Why not just end it with a direct to the camera message?
Yeah.
And the people I work with were like, honestly, there's almost like they had their response was like, oh, can we do that? And I was like, we can do whatever we want. Like, it's a punk rock movie.
Hell yeah.
By definition, we're giving it away. Like, we don't have to worry about Disney weighing in with opinions. Like we're giving it away, and it's a punk rock movie. You can do anything. And punk rock was about direct communication. And so I was like, why not just end with that direct level of communication, even if it's a bit unprecedented when it comes to the structure of a film.
And it sort of reminded me of almost like the scene at the end of Goodfellas when he's walking in and he's in the courtroom, and all of a sudden he just turns to the camera and just starts addressing very powerful. He starts addressing the camera, walks through the courtroom, and it's like, whoa, wow, okay, he's really addressing me now, and it works very well. Let me ask you: is there anybody now? Looking at the film, a lot of friends of mine, a lot of people that have been on the show. You, Dave Dichter, Purcell, Toby, Chaco, Walter, Derek, John Joseph, Sergio Vega, Doyle, and Satan all have been on this show. Is there anybody that you hope for, or that maybe whatever schedule? Is there anybody you were hoping for that maybe didn't make this one?
Well, I wanted to try and have Carl from Earth Crisis.
Sure.
We had Scott from Earth Crisis, which was great, but I really wanted to have Carl, but he lives in upstate and just schedule-wise didn't work out. The band Propagandhi, I wanted to have them involved. for some reason also didn't work out. Penny Rambeau from Crass, we had Steve Ignorant from Crass.
Sure.
And I guess the other thing is I realized I'm 57 years old. And so my understanding of hardcore and punk is not all that current. Like the most recent band in the movie is ACXDC.
Right.
And to your point, what you were saying earlier is like, there's so much new hardcore, there's so much new punk, and there's that spirit of activism, and there's a huge vegan hardcore movement. And I'm just not that aware of what's going on today. And I tried to educate myself and I tried to become aware of it, but I'm almost hoping that someone a lot younger than me makes part 2 to this, and that it focuses on where the state of like hardcore vegan animal rights activism is today.
Yeah, and hopefully that's the case. I mean, art inspires art, man. Right? We know that. It's like, and I've said it. I've said it before. When the first one I did, the Boston hardcore film, when people asked, why, I said, well, I saw the film American Hardcore, and I thought that I could do better. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. My hats are off to Paul Rackman and Steve Blush. They did a great job with the film. They were the first one through the door. But I thought Boston deserved a little bit better, and I thought that I could do better. And from my hardcore background, it inspired me. If you think you could do better, get up and do it. And so I made that film. And when I did the Q&A for that film, I said, listen, if you think you could do better, I challenge you. Get up and I challenge you to get up and make a film.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope for in a lot of my stuff, is that my art, my films are going to inspire people to go, wow, that really shook something loose, and I think I'm going to expound on that or whatever, and hopefully that'll be the case here.
I mean, there is something, again, like I assume you had this experience, and probably a lot of people watching had this experience, like in the early days of hardcore, like you'd go to a show and sometimes the bands, like I remember the first time I saw Agnostic Front, like I love Agnostic Front, but they were still learning how to play their instruments.
Sure.
And I remember thinking like, oh, I can do, like, okay, me too. Like, let's like, if they're on stage and they're figuring things out, or like the first time I saw Heart Attack, same thing, like, oh, they don't really know what they're doing, but they're gonna figure it out. So it's sort of, it's empowering when you realize like there is that spirit of get out there, make a movie, write a book, do something, start a band. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you'll figure it out. And if you fall down, someone will reach down and pick you up.
Absolutely. What's next for the film? What's on the agenda?
I mean, we've done a bunch of translations because there are obviously a lot of people in the world who don't speak English. And so we've done a lot of subtitled translations. And I mean, I guess what's next is continue to give it away for free. And, we keep getting these weird requests, like, people all over the world saying, oh, we want to do a screening of it. We want to do this. And I'm like, sure. Like, and they're like, oh, don't we need a contract? I'm like, no, just take the movie, do whatever you want with it. Like, if you want to re-edit it. If you want to add to it, like, as long as you're not putting Tyson chicken stuff in there, then by all means, like, it's that approach I have generally with music, with everything. It's like, once you put it out into the world, it's common property. Like, people can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, I think it's just such a great approach, and you mentioned it, with your music as well. And we have the Stone family, we have the Ali film up, we have the Leyendecker documentary up. There's an inherent value in putting, not to get Haight-Ashbury about it, but free, get it out there for free, and things will happen as a result. So I'm a big believer in that.
And I understand not everyone can do that, but there's also like, especially as in the world of film production, the big outlets just keep becoming more and more conservative. Like,
Absolutely, man.
you know, the streaming services, and I watch them, but like they're not lining up to stream challenging, idiosyncratic documentary content. Like they want Marvel films, they want stuff based on current events.
Sure.
And like, so if you make something that's unique, that tells a really interesting story, there's a very good chance none of the established outlets are actually going to want it. And at that point, the only way you can have an audience for it is give it away for free.
Sure, but even in the couple of years since, let's say that, in the past 10 years, I've done 5 music docs or whatever. The terrain has changed greatly. I mean, Netflix wouldn't pick up a film like the Alago film right now. They're not picking up independent films. Netflix is going out and doing all their own productions, so they own it, so they control it. They're not looking to license anything from anybody anymore. That door is closed. So, the hope is that there are other platforms that bubble up underneath it that give the opportunity to content like mine and yours, whether it's, and I'm saying some obvious ones, but a Hulu or a Tubi or other platforms, it will bubble up underneath, and a platform will be created, or it's coming up, that will play all this kind of stuff.
I hope so, because as we both know, like there's so many filmmakers. I mean, like in the world of music, for example,
sure,
the music streaming services, they might be problematic, but they're very democratic. Anybody can upload music to SoundCloud. Anybody can upload music to YouTube, or etc. So like, if you make music, you can get it up there. But like in the world, like making a movie takes such a long time, and for so many people, it's such an expensive labor of love. And I do wish that there were more viable platforms for content that isn't going to fit on Disney Plus, that isn't going to fit on Netflix. Like there has to be an outlet, for the idiosyncratic underground content.
I am grappling with this very issue as we speak, with the stuff that I'm doing, and where's it going, and what's a bit discerning is for a filmmaker, for an independent filmmaker, it's as these platforms become less and less viable, it becomes less inspiring to go out and make a film. It's like, what am I doing? Am I going to go out and spend a year or 2 or 3 making a film and raising money, and then where's it going to go? And it wasn't like that. It was not like that 10 years ago.
Yep. It's definitely like fewer things are getting made, fewer things are getting released. And I really hope, who knows, someone's going to come along and create this platform that will enable, independent filmmakers to actually have their, films heard, seen and heard. Because as you know better than anyone, making a movie, it takes years, and it's expensive, and it's so much work. And the fact that there are all these filmmakers out there who are giving up their lives to make these movies, and they never find an audience, it's really, I'm hoping someone creates that platform that we're talking about.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you should say that, because in a regard, and I know you relate to this, I've been doing these Sunday matinee, all ages free Sunday matinees at the Bowery Electric, which is right next to Gildersleeves. It's Jesse Mallon's place, right? And we've been doing them for a couple years now, and they're free. And I put together eclectic bills. You kind of have someone from the 80s, someone from the 90s, an oi band, a punk band, and some kids, and we've been doing them, and they've been pretty successful. And I got to say that almost nothing brings me more joy than when that is popping and the community is there, and it's just a cauldron of people, and there's communication going back and forth, and I'm kind of standing in the middle of it, having thrown the party, and it just brings me an incredible amount of joy to do that at this point. When we do those shows, it really, 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 because it harkens back to when you and I were teenagers, and just knowing how, there was such a currency in going to those matinees and going to the anthraxing, hanging out outside and cross-pollinating with people. So it brings
Yeah,
me
I mean,
joy
like I
to see
said, that experience that I had at the Anthrax in 1983, loaning my amp to Rick Rubin, and fast forward 40 years, and we're still in touch with each other and friends.
Sure. Absolutely. Can we take a couple of questions? Are you?
Yeah.
I know you're on the clock. So
The one thing my one caveat is I realize I'm on my phone and the phone battery is going to die. So if at some point I cut out,
that's your
blame.
goodbye.
Yeah. So like I'm hoping that I have enough battery left for these next few minutes.
I like what Mike LaRouche says. He says, what's cool about Moby is he's not stuck in just one environment, and expand your musical interests. And, could you kind of give us your take on just your personal take of the music terrain? You were a hardcore guy. You got into other stuff. Is there an overall sort of view regarding music as a whole?
I mean, my background is really weird because when I was really young, like 9 years old, I actually studied music theory and classical music.
Mm.
And then I heard The Clash on WNEW, and I started the Vatican Commandos.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started hanging out at Danceteria. And as a result of that, I was exposed to hip hop and electronic music and all these different types of music. And I just thought, oh, honestly, I love everything. So, I mean, I remember one night at Danceteria, probably in 82 or 83, seeing Mission of Burma, Bad Brains, watching Joy Division videos in the Gothic Video Lounge, hearing a hip hop DJ, maybe even there was a gay disco at the top, and it all just made so much sense that these different genres would coexist. And so that's always been my approach, is do everything and love everything, because, as much as I love Pantera, I also love Nick Drake and James Taylor. As much as I love Ray Vaughan Williams, I also love Public Enemy. I've never understood the idea that one musical genre should exclude others. And if people disagree with me, by all means, that's fine. But I've always been enthusiastic about everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you mentioned Danceteria, I thought back to sort of area and places like that we used to go to. And we've mentioned this many times, that early on in the game, things like New York hardcore and graffiti and hip hop were all very underground movements. It wasn't like people look at hip hop now, it's a huge, but there was a time in New York when, hip hop was just as underground as New York hardcore, and those were exciting times to go to a lot of those clubs and be in that cauldron, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I even remember going to CB's in 82, 83, and there was a bartender there I had a crush on, and I wanted to impress her because she liked punk rock, but she also loved reggae, and she loved African music, and she loved all these different genres. And so I would try and impress her by learning about the music that she loved. And then she and I never dated, but I ended up really loving the records that she turned me on to.
It was the girl. She's the one that steered me to the Clash. It was her.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't matter. And this one, doesn't matter what got you here. What matters is you're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Sobriety and punk rock.
There you go. Listen, this could be a bit of a quagmire, but thoughts on the Punk Rock Museum?
Oh, I have a very selfish thought about it, and this is so provincial, but basically my friend Jim, who started the Vatican Commandos, he lives in New Mexico, and he's this wonderful guy with this wonderful family, but he works very hard. And I was approached by the Punk Rock Museum about including some Vatican Commandos memorabilia, and I put them in touch with Jim, and he was so thrilled that anyone remembered the Vatican Commandos. And he dug up some t-shirts and some flyers. And so I don't know. so selfishly, I'm happy that they reached out to my friend Jim.
Okay.
And that they made him happy asking him for some T-shirts and flyers. Beyond that, I hate Las Vegas. I hope to never go there again in my entire life. But you know what? You never know. Like some kid might be visiting Las Vegas with his family and stumble into the punk rock museum and be inspired and maybe start the greatest band, make the greatest record ever. So it's like, it's probably not for me because I hate Las Vegas and seems a little weird, but you never know. It might serve a strange source or form of inspiration for someone.
I'm with you 100% on that. I hope I never set foot in Las Vegas again.
Yeah, it's terrible. The worst. I hate it so much.
I always hated it. I never liked it for a minute. It's just this underlying, they're just trying to separate you from your money. Is just an underlying sort of. I get an underlying creepy feeling. Now I know there's a whole nother Vegas that has nothing to do with that. There's people that
I don't
live
think
in
there is.
Yeah.
I've
Right.
looked for it because I've played shows there, and like there's always that like, oh, where's the the old Vegas, the CD. Maybe it's there. I've yet to, granted I didn't look that hard, but like to me the best thing about Las Vegas is not being there.
You know what softened me up to the Punk Rock Museum? I saw Roger Moret from Agnostic Front was doing some tours, was doing a walking tour, and I saw he posted a thing, and you know what? If it's good for Roger, who's one of the kindest and most gracious people out there, then you know what?
Yeah,
I'm cool.
It's not for you. It's not for me, but I do think it has the potential to serve a need and to expose people to stuff they might not otherwise be exposed to. So I'm not going to criticize it, but I'm also probably not going to go there.
Is this I thought for a second, hold on, let me I got a question for you about this picture, if I can get it to post. At first I thought that this was DJ Red Alert or Grandmaster Flash, but it is not now that I'm looking at it.
That's me on the left. Again, when the good old days of the 80s when I had hair. And so during this period, this is sort of like the mid 80s, I was, playing in a hardcore band, but I was also DJing and playing hip hop and playing a lot of reggae and living in an abandoned factory. And I somehow ended up DJing, and maybe because I was like one of the only weird, scrawny little white kids playing hip hop, but I got invited to play a lot of weird hip hop shows. And
is this in Connecticut? Where is this?
That's actually in New Rochelle.
Up like Westchester.
Yeah, it's in Westchester.
Yeah, sure.
New Rock City. So I somehow kept getting invited to play hip hop shows. Not anything. I think I might have DJ'd with Mr. Magic at some event, but like for the most part, I was just playing very underground, odd hip hop battles and things. And I think that I was such a sort of a strange freak to them because I was like this weird, skinny white kid playing Eric B. and Rakim records.
Sure. Did you know Paris Mayhew from the Cro-Mags was he says, I was a Steadicam operator on a Moby video, New York.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. The video, for better or worse, I think I'm only in the video for about 2 seconds, but it's this fake dance troupe. They're this fake comedian dance troupe who go to New York and do the most phenomenally terrible, ridiculous choreography. So, and I wish I could take credit for it, but it was completely the director's idea. And I think I showed up and was in it for 2 seconds. And apart from that, I had nothing to do with it, but it's a great video. I wish I could take some credit for it, but it's 100% Evan Bernard, the director, who did it.
Fair enough. Chris Hoffman asks, and let me plural this. What favorite reggae dance hall records?
Oh boy. Yeah, I got really obsessed with dance hall. I loved Pinchers and Lieutenant Stitchy. Shinehead with Cap Fit was a big one. It's been a while.
Going deep.
But yeah, like some of those, like, oh boy. Some of them, once you, like, I had a friend who was a dance hall DJ, and he was from Jamaica, and he would tell me what the lyrics were, and I would like I remember there was this one song called Punani Too Sweet, and I did not know what that meant until he explained it to me. And I was like, oh my, like I felt Victorian. I was like, oh, that's so racist.
That's great. That's great. Hey, Joel Ghostin here. Hi, Moby. We have a bass player in common, Greta Brinkman. Can you speak a bit on what it was like for you to work with her?
Yeah, Greta. So in 1998, I lost my record deal, and I thought that my career as a musician was over. And then I released the album Play, which ended up being really successful. And at one point I realized, oh, I have to tour with a band. So I started hiring musicians, and I hired Greta. And Greta had been in, like you mentioned, Coney Island High. Like she was part of that, like Don Hill's Coney Island High world. And I'd seen her, and she was just like so cool and so, like this beautiful, cool bass player. And so we toured together for a couple of years with her then husband, Duard. And yeah, she was great. I mean, the one thing I will say that was really funny is she was a complete food hoarder. Like at one point she opened her bass case, and I think there were more Cliff Bars in there than actual like I think she maybe even gotten rid of the bass to fill it with just Cliff Bars.
There's like some people develop this inherent fear when they go out on tour.
Yeah.
And they become like crazy hoarders. And then you have other people. I think I fall into that category. After going on tour, I started to get into this sort of like perverse notion of I would just show up for a tour with a toothbrush. That's it. Nothing else. And my attitude was, I'm going to just create everything. I'm going to buy a pack of underwear. I'm going to buy socks. Because, you go out on tour and you pack a bunch of shirts, and like every night someone's giving you T-shirts and when bands are making, you want a pair of shorts? You want a pair of shorts? Like, so eventually I would just show up with a toothbrush and just wing it from there and come home with a ton of stuff.
That makes sense. I mean, I will say with Greta, like when we toured together, she was absolutely the coolest, most dramatic person in the band. I mean, I say dramatic, and like just her stage presence was so remarkable. Like I think she had more fans than I did.
Is that right, Astoria Lou? Was Greta played a few shows with Kraut? Is that right? That's interesting.
Possible. I'm not. It's funny. So Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, he had a radio show here in LA, and I used to do it all the time.
Sure.
And at one point, I realized he had produced the Kraut album.
Yes.
And I'd loved like Unemployed and like, I mean, Unemployed is such a great song. But at one point I was looking at the liner notes and I was like, Steve Jones produced this. Like,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I that Kraut stuff was just reissued on Cleopatra. Matt Green had to quarterback that. And that stuff is all, but Kraut weighs heavy in our world here still, because I'm a Queens guy. A lot of my friends from Astoria, Davey Gunner, the singer for Kraut, is in a band called End the Hope. He's in our circle, our Bowery Electric circle. So Kraut is still a band that resonates, pretty strongly.
Do you want to hear a funny Kraut story?
Please.
So when I was 15, maybe 16, but probably 15, my friends and I heard that Kraut were playing at A7.
Now we're talking.
And we thought this was a concert. So we got there at 8 p.m. The doors opened, I think, at 10. So we've been sitting on the corner of 7th and Avenue A waiting for the doors to open. Finally, the doors open. We go in. And I believe Dougie, who was there, basically someone from Kraut was also bartending.
Doug Holland.
Yeah, so Dougie was bartending. We hung out at the bar and drank Cokes. And I think they went on at 2:00 in the morning. And so we spent 8 hours waiting for them to go on. The show was amazing.
I have the Kraut A7 photo right here. Boom.
Oh, wow.
There it is. There's Kraut at A7, 1982.
Yeah, so that it's possible I'm that kid on the right, or
possibly the kid that's cringing in the back, right?
other funny thing that I remember so clearly is I had drawn an X on the back of my hand. I didn't know what it meant because we had heard tell of straight edge, but we didn't really know what that was. I just thought it looked cool to have an X on the back of my hand. And Dougie held me down and with rum cleaned the X off the back of my hand. And I thought this was so funny and cool. Like, I'm in New York and Dougie from Kraut is wiping this straight edge X off the back
It's
of my
like a
hand.
rite of passage, right?
Yeah.
You know what's really rare? Do I have, where's those? I have some great, hold on. Very, very rare. You know, the Channel 3 guys sent me some, I don't know if I'll be able to find these. They sent me some pictures from the inside of A7, like the bar area, which are very rare. I've never seen any photos. And it's like literally like, it's like a S&M dungeon, it looks like. You know, it was just so, it was like Valhalla. It was just.
I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, but I got to say, for like 16-year-old kids who had driven in from Connecticut, like we thought, like I remember the first show we went to was Fear at the Mud Club. And maybe the third or fourth was Kraut at A7. And
this is all, I know these shows. This is all 1982.
Yeah. Well, I think we saw Fear, maybe it was 81, 82. But at the same time, it was like, you know, it was just so magical being a 15-year-old kid in Lower Manhattan, back when Lower Manhattan was the scariest place on the planet. But like, wow, it was, I mean, yeah, there's a reason 40 years later we're still talking about it, because it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, here, being that we're just sort of bouncing the ball back and forth, here's a show I went to, and in December of 1981, I went and saw Black Flag at the Mud Club, and it was had a very profound effect on me. Black Flag was a band that was, you know, their reputation preceded them, and I went down by myself. I didn't know, because I was up in Boston going to college, and that's where I fell in with the whole SSD Control crew. I was back on on like holiday vacation. I was by myself. I went down to the Mud Club. I went in by myself, and I saw the mighty Black Flag. And this is when Henry just joined the band. And the Mud Club was a small place.
Yeah.
And it was it was a very intense show.
Yeah, I used to follow, I mean, Black Flag during that period. And I remember the lineup, at least correct me if I'm wrong, but so it was Henry, and then Dez was playing rhythm guitar.
Sure, yes.
Greg on lead guitar.
Yep.
Chuck Dukowski on bass, and Robo on drums.
Yeah.
And it was the greatest thing. I mean, Bad Brains were remarkable as well, but like that lineup of Black Flag.
For that moment, moment, they were incredible.
Like it was like I'd never heard anything that powerful.
You know where I saw them play, which was a little bit maybe up in your end of a place called the Living Room. Remember the Living Room in Providence, Rhode Island? Yeah. I saw Black Flag at the Living Room, and it was an incredible show. Henry swung his head around and hit his head on the headstock of Chuck Dukowski's bass, and kind of cut his head open, and he was singing, and there was blood, and we were just like, it was intense.
Yeah, I've got a few Black Flag scars from stage diving and not being caught.
Is that right? Was our friend Allie from Stiff Little Fingers your tour manager?
He was my tour manager and my bass player for about 10 years.
Is that right?
And what's funny is I didn't know he had been in Stiff Little. He didn't tell us for like the first 6 months. Yeah, so and he still to this day will not tell me if he was Protestant or Catholic, because we kept asking him, like, so what was it like growing up in Belfast?
Yeah, that's like that's like for a guy like that, like, ooh,
And one other funny thing is he had some ID with a typo where they, instead of Ally McMorty, they spelled it Ally McMortal. So if you ever run into him, please, by all means, call him Ally McMortal.
Great. Our friend Robert Hogg in Scotland. Hi, Moby. Big fan of your music here in Scotland. I remember buying Next is the E when it came out. What was your idea behind the B-side 1000?
Oh, by any chance, do you remember? Okay, so you were talking about area, and that space had become a few different other clubs.
Hit
and
me. What are you talking?
I forget which one it was. Was it Shelter? It might have been Shelter. And I went to go see this DJ named Sven Voth. And he played a song, like a techno song that went from about 130 beats per minute to 180 beats per minute. And at this point, I was living on Mott Street. And I went home that night and I was like, why did it stop at 180 beats per minute? Why not just keep going? And I kept with my sequencers seeing how fast I could get it. And I got it to the point where it was like actually at around 1,000 beats per minute. At that point, the beats are indecipherable. It just sounds like a blur of kick, drum, and noise. But somehow this weird song called 1,000 ended up being sort of like a rave anthem in the really like underground GABA house world.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I would love nothing more than to just keep talking, but I do have to get going. And also I can see that the little red line on my phone.
Okay, good.
Give up the ghost.
Thank you for opening the exit door. Anybody you want, thank you for coming. Let me tell everybody real quick here. The punk rock vegan movie, it's on YouTube. It is friggin' free. Go watch it. It is free. I highly recommend it. I greatly enjoyed it. I watched it twice. Anybody you want to thank or shout out, Moby?
Oh boy. I mean, I could start. I have to say every single person who allowed me to interview them for the movie, starting from Steve Ignorant, Captain Sensible, Ian Mackay, HR, Doyle, John Joseph, on and on and on. I mean, like some people you've mentioned, like Theo's coming on your show. She was such a remarkable person to interview for the movie as well. Arthur from Gorilla Biscuits. We've got about 60 interviews in the movie, so I could just keep listing people, but hopefully people watching will just go to watch the movie for free on YouTube.
Fantastic. Okay, take care and be careful out there. And
Drew, congratulations on 3 years. Well done.
Thank you, Mob. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks again.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Great show. I enjoyed it. Hope you did too. Smart guy. Great film. I highly recommend the film. It's really great. Watch it for this bit alone. It was really funny. Smart filmmaking. I gotta say, the first third of the film is a really good hardcore punk documentary. It's really good. Then it gets heavy into the vegan and the animal rights thing. But there's an inherent value. The first third of it is like one of the best punk hardcore documentaries I've seen in a long time. And he's a smart guy. He thank you, John. Thank you. So great. Always nice to get a pro on the show every now and then. You know what? Because I'm a bit of a superstitious guy. So let me read through the sponsor stuff, and we'll do a couple more minutes. We got a couple more things to talk about. So we're sponsored by blah 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 and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They're a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They are about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh perspectives while retaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them. Ramp up your game at www.126hardcoreclothing.com. Come on now. Who I'm about to do Wednesday. This Wednesday, although there's no public show, we're doing a Patreon-only show. Devin from DTFM just got like boxes and boxes of records, and he's going to open them up, and we're going to go through them on the show on Wednesday if you're a patron. DTFM looking for extreme music? DTFM Vinyl has got you. Located on 13th Ave in Fargo, North Dakota, we have the state's best selection of punk, hardcore, metal, ska, oi, and more. Can't make it in? Shop online from anywhere in the good old US of A at www.dtfmvinyldistrict.com. DTFM Vinyl, where the policy still is and always will be death to false metal. Last but not least, our good friends Mario and Kim at Upstate Records. They're a New York-based DIY independent metal and hardcore label. Founded in 2017, they broke into the hardcore scene with their inaugural 26-band compilation in 2018, and since then have churned out over 80 releases in their brief yet eloquent 5-year history. In 2023, look for new releases by Mark Rizzo's new band, Revenge Beast, Carl from Earth Crisis' Freya, Fury of Five, a personal favorite, Angry Corpses, and a few more surprises that are in the works. Check them out at www.upstaterecordsnewyork.com. Use the code STONE10. That's STONE10 and get 10% off. Let's talk about this, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's go through the gamut of live events we have coming up in La Ciudad de Nueva York. Sunday, April 29th, in our beloved Tompkins Square Park, Madball, Murphy's Law, Crown of Thorns, Vulture Raid, and The Capturers. Sunday, April 30th, we are back at the Bowery Electric with our free all-ages Sunday matinee. Go is playing their first New York show in 12 years. Crazy Eddie, Down Low, Crippled and Chum Huffer. Rampage Fest 5, Sunday, April 21st. 7 bands on 2 stages featuring Reaching Out, Cropsy, Extinguish the Code, Pink Mist, Sewage, Raid, and Disguised. If it's free, it is for me. Come on back into Tompkins Square Park. This is a show that I'm personally throwing Sunday, May 27th. That is if I'm back from the Milwaukee Metal Fest that morning. But we won't get into that. Saturday, May 27th, Leeway, Rebelmatic, Butterbrain, Winterwolf, Scott Helland, Guitar Me of One. Kings Never Die release party at Generation Records, Sunday, June 3rd. And come on now, if you haven't heard, you've probably been living in a cave. The first show sold out. We are honored. ID is opening up the festivities on June 18th. It is Biohazard's return to New York City with Sworn Enemy, Sheer Terror, Fury of Five, Sub-Zero, and Incendiary Device. It's going to jump off tonight and on June 15th. And yo, don't ask me to put you on the friggin' guest list, okay? We're playing friggin' first, all right? I'm probably going to have a hard time getting my friggin' girlfriend in the damn place, all right? So don't fucking bother me with that shit. Sunday, June 25th, it is my birthday bash. I'm celebrating it with Steve Zing. Morning Noise, first show in 35 years in New York City. The High and the Mighty, come on now, Road Warrior. If the time is right, we're ready to fight. Zum is playing guitar. Tristan's playing bass. Get your shoes and socks on, kids. One Life All In, Don Fu's coming in from Cleveland. Concrete Ties and Chemical X. Sunday, July 30th, back at the Bowery Electric, Dog Eat Dog, Kings Never Die, Dead Crew, ID, and Serial Poets, and The Take on August 13th with Silence Equals Death, Star Car featuring Sab Gray from Iron Cross, Ma'afa, and first show in 10 years, Mr. Pickle. So all that is happening. I did mention that the new book is being designed. Yes, listen, join Patreon. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Smoke it for you? What do I got to do? Come over there and beat it out of you? Join Patreon. Friggin' support the show, will you, you cheap fuck? $2, $5. You get the book for free. Get the friggin' next volume for free. Help me help you. As you can see, super killer. You know, here we're talking about Coney Island High. Sick of It All show at the Roxy. The shows at the gas station on Avenue B. This is Dean Miller and Mad Mike Dixon talking about No Redeeming Social Values for a show. So the New York Hardcore Chronicles Volume 2, 1990 to 1999 is happening. What's that? Let's see. Meanwhile, back in the chat room, let's see what's going on here. GBH played the other night in Belfast. You know, I have never seen GBH play. They're kind of on my bucket list, like GBH, Chicago, The Cure. Never saw these bands. Yes, Dog Eat Dog for free, Perry. Come on now. Saddle up. Oh, mic tech. Yeah, I need a mic tech for the Biohazard show. Yep. Drew, what's the story behind the folded flag behind you? You want to know the story? I'll tell you the story. I will tell you the story. Interesting you should ask. Hold on, let me grab this. Okay, this is a bit of a presentation, but hopefully you will find it interesting. So one thing we haven't really talked about on the show is I had a whole career doing extreme sports films, and I did all the urban street bike warrior films. I had an incredible run of, I did 9 films in 7 years. And for those 7 years, street bike motorcycle stuff was my life, and I traveled the whole world. At a certain point, they asked the soldiers that are stationed at the naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, if you could have any form of entertainment, what would you like? And they said motorcycle stunt show. So they called Super Street Bike Magazine, right? They called Super Street Bike Magazine, and they said, hey, we want to do a motorcycle stunt show. And the guy's name is escaping me. He said, motorcycle stunt show, the person you want to speak to is Drew Stone. Because at the time, I had my film Black Sheep Squadron out, and we were doing shows and stuff like that. So they get in touch with me. They say, we want to do a motorcycle stunt show. And we handle the details for the troops stationed down there and their families. So we end up going down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And this here is the cover of Super Street Bike Magazine, this plaque. And there's an article right there. And if you could see where I'm sitting there, I'm sitting in the middle of that picture with, and this is signed by Chris Teach McNeil, who's in the shot. And these are guys I lived with and traveled the world with for a couple years. But what I'm holding in that picture is this flag of the United States of America presented to urban street bike warriors. This is to certify that the accompanying flag was flown over ComNavy's headquarters located on the United States Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, the only U.S. naval base on communist soil. And the back of it is signed by all the writers who we took the trip with. So in the middle of this motorcycle stunt show, they took a pause of the show, and the commander of the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base did this whole thing, came out and presented me with this flag. And then they put it in this thing, and they gave it to me before I left the island. So this was given to me by the commander of the naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, because we went down there and put on this show for their people. So that's the story behind that. And I know it sits in the back of all the shows, but it's really one of the more cherished things that I have. I don't keep a lot of stuff, I'm not hung up on that stuff, but this was a very emotional moment for me. It was a very emotional moment because once again, it was one of those moments I've had, and I'm sure you can relate. You've had similar moments like this in your life, maybe not pertaining to a film you made, but maybe with your child or whatever. This was a moment that hit me really hard. It was like the art that I make, the films that I make resonate and touch people, and it brings me around the world, and it brought me here to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to bring joy to these people. It was like really, I almost get choked up talking about it now. Would I go back and ever do it again? We went back after that for like 3 years. They kept inviting us back. And funny enough, one time we went, and later on, like the third time, and there was like a jazz band playing, and the drummer of this jazz band said, "Hey man, I play in this band back home called 24/7 Spies." I'm like, "What?" So there's always like this connection, and I see him from time to time. And when we had Jimmy on the show, we talked. I forgot dude's name, but he was the drummer in 24/7 Spies. So it was yeah, right. Pretty cool, Brett the Bookie. Yep. So yeah. You know, I need to do an Urban Street Bike Warrior reunion show on here. I almost put it together with Kyle Woods and them, and you know, so that said, well, thank you. Yeah, GBH is playing Gramercy. I saw that. What else? What else you got? What else? Do you need any other backstories needed on anything? I could give you any backstories. Just let it fly. Oh yeah, a lot of people. I saw people. It's part of. Listen? I was around the beginning of the Rough Riders thing, man. When that whole thing, I was there. Wink. With Wink and everybody. We were all the Wheelie Boys. I directed the film. It's like something out of Jaws, right? See that? I directed the film 12 O'Clock. Got the tattoo to prove it, right? I directed the film 12 O'Clock, and that's what opened up all that for me. I directed 12 O'Clock. I directed Urban Street Bike Warriors, and I directed on MTV. Remember the series True Life? I did the I Live to Ride episode along with my brother. So yeah. Were there any bikes you got to ride? I wasn't a stunt bike rider, bro. I owned a Harley back in the day, but I wasn't stunting on motorcycles. I had to be careful. I've suffered a couple big injuries, which, I shattered my clavicle snowboarding, and I got hurt making 12 O'Clock. I got hit by a bike and broke my toe, my foot, my leg, and my hand. And we've also talked about on the show, I had open heart surgery at a certain point years ago. So it became, I got to a certain point where I was like, I shouldn't be getting on motorcycles, scooters, snowboards. I stay off that shit now. Yeah, there was some female. Any cool Onyx stories? Yeah, sure. Paris Mayhew and I talked about this. There was a bunch of crazy Onyx stories, man. I mean, Paris remember this one. We were in a meeting with Onyx, and we were talking about doing this was like the third video we did. We did Slam, then we did Slam with Biohazard, the Bionics version. Then we did the song Shifty. Big video, big budget, 3-day shoot. And we're at a meeting and we're listening to Sticky Fingers go, blah, 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 I want to do this. And at the end of the video, I want to get in a spaceship and I want to fly away. You want to get in a spaceship and you want to fly away, huh? Yeah, no problem. We could do that. Budget, no problem. Build a spaceship, you can fly away in your music video. What band do you want to create with now? I can't talk about it because it's happening. A lot of people know what's going on, but I can't talk about it right now, but you'll hear about it soon. It's going down. Yeah. I don't know if it's, I'm tethered. Listen, it's no secret. I'm tethered to these guys. Here's a clue. We're playing with them June 18th. How's that for a clue? Yeah, all that's going down. All that's going down. But yeah, I'm the singer from Minor Threat. God. Our record's mixed, by the way, and it's killer. Yeah, you got it. What else? Yeah, that's right, RS70. People don't understand the Urban Street Bike Warrior things I'm talking about. The 9 film. Let me see. I should have that somewhere. Hold on. Where is? Yeah, I don't have. Yeah. Well, so I can't find it. But what RS is saying here is this was before YouTube. The success I had doing the Urban Street Bike Warrior films was before YouTube hit. When I'd make one of these films, they would be duplicated to VHS or later to DVD. They would go into motorcycle shops, and we'd sell a hell of a lot of them. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was my life. It was my life. It took me around the world many times, and I bought a house, and it was those were great times. And then the whole market collapsed in a year. The DVD market just collapsed because YouTube came in. But it's a double-edged sword because here we are on YouTube right now, and even though YouTube crushed me in my career then, I'm back on YouTube here now, and it's enabled this career to happen. So round and around we go. Round and round. Right? It's crazy. So, what's the street date for the ID album? I don't know. Bridge 9's going to make there's going to be an announcement. I think the single and the music video are going to be dropped. And then I think there'll be a lull, and then the other stuff will come out after that. But we're still coming to terms. We still got to sign the deal, and they're going to handle our merchandise as well. But that's all happening. So favorite metal bands. My favorite metal bands. Wow. Metal as in like, what's metal? Like when I think of metal, like metal. Like metal. My favorite metal bands, the way I think of metal, Deep Purple, Judas Priest, like metal. I think metal to me is traditional metal. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Cro-Mag's Best Wishes. I know that's considered a crossover album, but that's one of my favorites. What other metal? Oh yeah, thank you, Motorhead. Is Motorhead heavy metal? I guess Motorhead's metal. Like Motorhead exists in in their own fucking world, man. You know what my girlfriend's reading? Hold on. My girlfriend's reading that Rob Halford book, and I pick it up every now and then. Where is that? It's right over there. I love Deep Purple, man. I love, and I know I'm off beat, but I love the David Copperfield era Deep Purple. The 3 records that, I'm a Copperfield, fanatic. Those 3 Deep Purple records, Stormbringer, Come Taste the Band, and Burn. That's my favorite Deep Purple shit right there. Yeah. Rochelle's reading the book. It's right over here. I pick it up every now and then. Rob Halford lays it out, pretty good. Yeah, love Coverdale. I'm that's one of my big David Coverdale fan. It's true. Yeah, Burn is good, man. Stormbringer. And I love Come Taste the Band that Richie Blackmore doesn't even play on. Love that record. Love that fucking record. I don't think I've heard David Coverdale's first solo album, but we put on, I like the early Whitesnake stuff, Black Sabbath. Yeah, of course. Black Sabbath. Shouting out Sean Brennan, guitar player of Incendiary Device. Love that stuff. Favorite grindcore bands. That's a little out of, let me see, how about, I'll tell you this about favorite grindcore bands. I will say this. Here's a shot of me producing the Brutal Truth God Player video. Here I am on the set on the right. I produced that. The director, and here's a crazy tie-in. The director in the middle, his name is Bill Ward. That was his name. He also directed the Life of Agony Through and Through video. But I produced this video for Brutal Truth, of course, that's Danny Lilker from Anthrax and Nuclear Assault in the back. So that's a connection I have to grindcore. I'm not a big grindcore guy. Not that I have anything against it, but it just wasn't really on my radar screen. Do I like any death metal? I respect death metal. I like some of it. It's just not. It wasn't on my radar screen. I love all music, man. It's what I do. I'm a music guy, right? I mean, it's what I do. My cousin sings for a band. My cousin sings for a band called Gnaw. Before that, he was in a band called Conate, and before that, he was in a band called Old Lady Drivers. They were on Earache. Death metal wasn't really on my radar screen, but I certainly appreciate it and enjoy it. You mentioned The Cure earlier. What's your favorite of theirs? Blood Flowers. I love the Cure record, Blood Flowers. I was a little late to the Cure game, and that record really resonated with me and really spoke to me. It really, at the time, somebody in my family passed away, and that record really, it really spoke to me at the time. I was a little late to the Cure game. Blood Flowers came out when I was sort of getting into them, and I just love that record, and it really speaks to me. I've never seen the Cure play. It's on my bucket list. I would love to see them play. Every time they play, I can't get tickets, and tickets are just ridiculously expensive. I mean, it's against my religion. I'm not going to spend $300, for me and my gal to go see music. No music is worth that. I'm sorry. No music to me is worth, $300. So, yeah, Blood Flowers is heavy, man. I love that record. So GBH is on my bucket list. I haven't seen them. Biggest band I haven't. The bucket list bands. As kooky as this may sound, GBH, The Cure, Chicago. For some reason, I want to see Chicago play. I've never seen them, and that's a band I hated for a million years. But I want to see, now that I saw the Chicago, I want to see like Saturday in the Park. This fucking shit you used to hate, like that kind of shit. Who else is on my bucket list? I have seen Buckethead a bunch of times. I like Buckethead. Yeah, I don't know why, but Chicago's on there. I told you the story, man. The last time I spent money on a ticket is when Van Halen came. They were back with David Lee Roth. Oh shit, Van Halen, David Lee Roth. And I went and I got a pair of tickets. And I went with this gal I was dating, and it was $360 for the pair of tickets. And we went to see Van Halen at the Garden. And you want to know something? They sucked. All right? Van Halen sucked. David Lee Roth, they were shot. They were friggin' shot. Eddie Van Halen could barely move. David Lee Roth stood in one place and like slid around. It was terrible. They sucked. Fuck that. What's with you and Michael Graves on this show? What is it? What is my chat room? Has my chat room become your place to carry on about Michael Graves? Paid $160 for the Rush tour. Yeah, listen, I could see it. Listen, if you're, if you love the band, and sometimes you hit it, right? They were terrible. They sucked. Who else did I see that sucked? You know what I did pay $100 for? That was good. Roger Waters' The Wall. When he came around, like the first time with The Wall, I spent $100 and like Roger Waters' The Wall. It was good. It was good. Somebody else mentioned him first. Listen, Michael Graves is a controversial figure. He's an old friend of mine. I don't get into his politics, and we don't really talk about politics on this show. Is that right? You got a puppy? Okay. And what's your puppy's name? Will there be $500 for incendiary device? I don't know if incendiary device has ever even played a show where you have to pay to get in. Actually, we have. We went out west and you had to pay. You had to pay. Oh, what do I think about Kiss? I saw Kiss a couple years ago. I think it was like me and Evan from Biohazard went. And you want to know something? They sucked. They sucked. Then again, and then we went to the Garden a couple years later, and I was up close, and it was a little bit better. But I saw them out at Jones Beach, and Peter Criss was playing drums. I could have gotten up there and played better drums than Peter Criss that night. He was awful. God awful. Struggle. I could seriously gotten up there and just went boom, back, boom, boom, back, boom, back, boom, boom, back, and done better than Peter Criss. He was struggling, Yeah. You saw the wall. I saw the original wall Coliseum. You talking about the Nassau Coliseum 1980? That was a ticket, bro. That was a ticket. Is that right? Paris Mayhew paid $500 for a box at Carnegie Hall to see Chris Cornell and his acoustic guitar, worth every penny. So close I could throw popcorn. Incredible. Good. Good for you. Good. Listen, sometimes you hit it, right? I mean, sometimes, I just got so burned on that Van Halen thing. I was like, fuck that, man. I mean, it's not much. Am I coming to Boston? I think the next time we're in Boston is we're going to do one of those. I think since we're signing to Bridge 9 Records, we're going to do one of those in-store performances at Bridge 9, like that band just did. I forgot their name. So we'll be playing at right, Sean? We'll be playing at Bridge 9. Hey, just a reminder to join the Agro's Army. Paris Mayhew, unfortunately, got his Facebook page compromised. He's rebuilding the Agro's Army. Yes, we want you for the Agro's Army. www.facebook.com/Agro's Army. Join the Agro's Army. Support those that support you, my friend. Newfound Glory, yes. So we're doing something like that probably when the record comes out in a couple months. Oh, yeah, we'll do Salem again for sure. Absolutely, we'll do. I talk about the trip that we took up there for that. And the trip that we took to Salem was one of the most enjoyable trips that I've taken in a while, Yeah, well, this was a far cry from Black Sabbath, Van Halen, 1978, bro. So we'll do that. Kiss ticket was $650. When was that? So Motorhead open for Ozzy. You know what me and my brother were talking about the other day? We saw right here, right in my neighborhood at the Beacon Theater in, I guess it was it 83? We saw the Motley Crue Shout at the Devil tour with Rat opening. And we were like 6th row center. Motley Crue Shout at the Devil tour, 6th row. It was like, wow, this is pretty great. They would, say what you want about Motley Crue, because you want to know something? I saw Motley Crue this summer at Citi Field. What was it? Motley Crue, Def Leppard. You want to know about Motley Crue? We saw them this summer. They sucked. Motley Crue fucking sucked this summer. It was so apparent to me that they were jumping around to a total pre-recorded track. They sucked. Fuck that. They sucked. At least Def Leppard came out and actually played some music. Fucking Motley Crue, it was terrible. 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 I don't know. I remember Motley Crue in '83. It was fun, man. They were great. They were like, shout at the devil, hung gun gang, because I'm alive. I'm alive. Why, y'all? It was good. Well, maybe we just, yeah, yeah. No, this was early on. Tommy Crew didn't have the moving drum set. I don't think in '83. Oh, what is this? Did I see a Blue Oyster Cult mention? New Year's Eve 75, 76, Blue Oyster Cult Kiss. I'm a big Blue Oyster Cult fan. You know what? That's a bucket list. I've never seen Blue Oyster Cult. I'd like to see Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah. What's up next movie? Can't really talk about it, but I'll give you a clue. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I love Blue Oyster Cult, man. Secret Treaties is like, whew. Listen, don't tell anybody, but I probably humped my girlfriend to Blue Oyster Cult Secret Treaties like 300 times. Can't miss with that. That and Led Zeppelin Houses of the Holy. Take it from, listen. You want to get down? I don't care who you're getting down with, right? Whatever. I don't care whatever floats your boat. Girl on guy, guy on girl, girl on girl, boy on whatever. Who cares? My advice to you, you want to get heavy? Led Zeppelin Houses of the Holy or Blue Oyster Cult Secret Treaties. Of this, I am sure. Right? Trust me. Help me help you. All right? What's better than Jews on Easter? Hey, Brett, I'll see you in a bit. I'll see you downstairs in a half hour. That said, hey, fun show. Yeah, Astronomy is a great track on that. Fun show. Thanks, everybody. We had a couple. Yes, Blue Oyster Cult sang the Godzilla song, but it's like a week from today. Did you see that? Chris Jericho's coming on the show. That's a good one, right? A week from today, we will be back with Kira from Black Flag. This will be a great one. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank our guest, Moby. Please join on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Until then, as Donna Summer would say, or as David Lee Roth would say, do good things, and good things will come to you.